stories around the world to stories here at home. This is the National News Broadcast. A pleasant evening. I'm Dilanjali Ananda.
And I am Tilina Udayaratna. We begin with a quick check on tonight's top stories. Travel restrictions to be reimposed from 11 p.m. tonight. Large sections of the public respond to the health protective guidelines. Deaths in India continue to rise. 500,000 doses of Sinopharm vaccines arrive in the country today. Fishing communities have been advised to refrain from coming into contact with chemical substances mixed with the ocean from the Singaporean vessel. A plan for a green social economy from the government.
For those and other stories in detail. The travel restrictions, which were relaxed temporarily, will be reimposed from 11 p.m. tonight. It was observed that the public were fulfilling their essential requirements while adhering to health guidelines during the travel restrictions lifted period since this morning. Accordingly, only selected retail outlets, pharmacies, fish, meat and vegetable shops, bakeries and fuel stations were permitted to be open during the travel restrictions released period. Also, only one person from each household was allowed to visit the nearest store to purchase essential items. While the public in many areas in the country adhered to health guidelines, some residents in several cities failed to comply with the efforts taken to curb the spread. State Minister Shashendra Rajapaksa engaged in an observational tour at the Narahempita Economic Centre to observe its activities this morning. Officers of the Consumer Affairs Authority also engaged in a sudden observational visit to the Narahempita Economic Centre. During the visit, the officers warned the vendors to exhibit the price rates of the items and refrain from selling goods at a higher rate. Reports have indicated that large stocks of vegetables were received by the Paliagod and Manning market, and many wholesale traders were present at the market for purchasing purposes. Reports have further indicated that more than 600,000 kilos of vegetables and fruits were received by Special Economic Centre in Tambuttegama. Large stocks of vegetables and fruits were received by Special Economic Centre in Dambulla. A large number of businessmen as well as consumers were seen at the Meegoda Special Economic Centre for retail and wholesale trading purposes. This is the situation in Paliagod Fisheries Trade Complex this morning. This was the situation in Paliagod Fisheries Trade Complex this morning. Palmyra Development Board has made a special request to allow toddy producers in North and East regions to engage in their activities without any hindrance during the travel restrictions imposed period. Accordingly, the district secretaries have granted permission in this regard. Minister Prasanna Ranatunga has said that a program to provide relief for the people who are deprived of an income due to the travel restrictions will be drafted before May 31st. A total of 745 persons have been taken into custody by the police yesterday for violating quarantine regulations. Accordingly, this is the highest single-day arrests made by the police for the violation of regulations. Special monitoring processes are underway with the support of the Sri Lanka Army Motorbike Unit and drones within Colombo and suburbs. Accordingly, the travel restrictions are being closely monitored jointly by the police and the tri-forces. Meanwhile, travel restrictions reimposed from 11 p.m. tonight will be relaxed at 4 a.m. on May 31st. The travel restrictions that will be reimposed on May 31st at 11 p.m. will remain in force until 4 a.m. on June 4th. Travel restrictions will be reimposed at 11 p.m. on June 4th and will be in effect until 4 a.m. on June 7th.
A consignment of 500,000 doses of Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccines donated by the government of China is expected to arrive in the country today. The respective consignment of vaccines will be distributed across the country for inoculation programs. 60 to 70% of the population in the country is expected to be received with the COVID-19 vaccine before the end of this year. Accordingly, the Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval to the proposal presented by Minister Pavitra Vanyarachi to purchase 14 million doses of Sinopharm vaccines and 1 million of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. The Cabinet of Ministers granted approval to establish high-dependency units equipped with wall oxygen devices to treat critically ill COVID-19 patients in provincially identified 25 hospitals covering the entire island. Also, the Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval to establish oxygen generator machines in 15 identified remote hospitals in order to ensure the necessary medical oxygen supply for hospitals. Meanwhile, the Cabinet approval was granted to provide 2,500 mobile medical oxygen generators for the 25 districts with 100 for each, and thereby reducing the need for oxygen supply through cylinders in hospitals. Also, the Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal presented by Minister Pavitra Vanyarachi to import 120,000 litres of liquid oxygen on a monthly basis to meet up the increasing medical oxygen demand and maintain an adequate secure stock in the country. The second dose of the Covishield vaccine were administered to 7,505 people yesterday. The number of those who have so far received the second dose of this vaccine is 338,493. The first dose of the Sinopharm vaccine was given to 2,000 persons yesterday. Up to now, 516,259 persons have been vaccinated with the Sinopharm. Meanwhile, Samagi Janabalawegaya parliamentarian Nalin Bandara and his wife have been tested positive for COVID-19. A total of 33 COVID-19 deaths have occurred during the period from the 17th to the 24th of May. 21 of those who died from COVID-19 complications have been identified as those over the age of 70. The US Embassy in Colombo handed over 13 million rupees worth 4,700 PCR test kits. The donation was received by State Minister Professor Channa Jayasumana and was presented by Director of the Indo-Pacific Development Group, Bradley Elder. Necessary funds for this project have been facilitated through the US Security Department as a grant for humanitarian assistance. State Minister Sudarshini Fernandopulle received a medical equipment donation worth 3 million rupees from the All Ceylon Bakery Owners Association today. The relevant equipment have been distributed to hospitals in Ampara and Putlam. The United States Embassy in Colombo handed over 13 million rupees worth of 4,700 PCR test kits, and the donation, which was received by State Minister Professor Channa Jayasumana, was presented by Director of the Indo-Pacific Development Group, Bradley Elder. Necessary funds for this project have been facilitated through the US Security Department as a grant for humanitarian assistance and disaster response. State Minister Dr. Sudarshini Fernandopulle was also present on this occasion. State Minister Sudarshini Fernandopulle received a medical equipment donation worth 3 million rupees from the All Ceylon Bakery Owners Association today. The relevant equipment have been distributed to hospitals in both Ampara and Putlam. And in the meantime, the Sri Lanka Board of Investment has taken steps to establish intermediate treatment centres in export processing zones in support of COVID-19 positive employees. Accordingly, the first treatment centre was established in the Katunayaka export processing zone. 300 beds were handed over to the treatment centre under the sponsorship of the National Youth Services Council. It was handed over by Minister Prasanna Ranatunga. State Minister D.V. Chanaka was also present at this occasion.
The Deputy Director General of Public Health Services, Dr. Hayman, urges the public to pay close attention to the prevailing COVID-19 pandemic situation in the country while adhering to necessary health and safety guidelines. He further said that the government has implemented 149 treatment centres and intermediate care centres for the treatment of COVID-19 patients.
A total number of 149 treatment centers and intermediate care centers have been established, in which there are 24,501 beds available for COVID-19 patients, out of which again 21,554 beds are being occupied at this moment. A total of 75 ICU beds are being occupied in intensive care units in different parts of the island. We need to make sure that the current movement restrictions imposed by the government to control the COVID-19 epidemic or outbreak at this moment should be meaningful, for which everybody's cooperation and support is required.
And in more news, reports have indicated that the fire erupted in the Singaporean MV Express Pearl vessel, which was caught on fire near the Colombo port, has not been mitigated thus far. Therefore, the Sri Lanka Navy has taken measures to pull the vessel away up to a distance of approximately 50 nautical miles with the intention to reduce any potential environmental damage. The vessel was caught on fire while being located 9.5 miles away from the port of Colombo. The fire that erupted on the vessel has continued to escalate due to the gusty wind condition that prevailed in Colombo last night. Reports have further indicated that the fire had also continued to spread due to the chemical substances stored in the containers of the ship. The Sri Lanka Navy and relevant groups who engaged in rescue operations have managed to rescue 25 staff members of the ship. However, 2 persons have been admitted to the National Hospital after sustaining injuries from an onboard explosion. 8 containers have been dislodged into the ocean due to the fire, and the relevant officials have said that the ocean has been polluted with the chemical components that were stored in these containers. The Marine Environmental Protection Authority has indicated that fisheries activity and shipping routes will be hampered following a potential leakage of chemical substances. Therefore, the authority has advised to be cautious in this regard. Measures have already been taken to pull away the ship into the deep sea area in order to avert any spillages. The Disaster Management Centre has warned the residents in coastal areas from the Kalani River estuary up to Ma Oya. The centre has further advised the public not to open, touch or even get closer to any of the containers.
From Negombo to Kalani and up to the Paradura, the coastal area. If any material, so there are a lot of hazard materials and 8 containers floating in these surrounding areas. This is very important things. These containers and the parts of these ships could be reached to the coastal area of Negombo to Kalani, then the Paradura and Kalutura area. So we have informed to the district disaster management units and the police and all the relevant agencies right now, so and inform the communities as well not to touch anything, and if anything's been observed, then they need to call for the police stations, the closest police stations, and to the camps if there is, and the MIPA or the 117 call center. 117 call center is completely open for all the disaster management activities in 3 languages, in free of the charge for the communities. That is very important. Call 117 call center if anything's been observed, and the parents are thoroughly advised to advise all the children not to touch anything observed at these coastal area from Negombo to Kalani and Kalani to Colombo, Colombo to Kalutura and Paradura area also. So it is very important point, and 117 call center is completely open.
Meanwhile, promptly responding to the emergency request, India has deployed multiple assets to douse the fire on the ship. Accordingly, vessels Vaibhav, Vajra and Samudra Pahrari of the Indian Coast Guard is expected to arrive in the country today for the efforts to douse the fire. Also, the tugwater Lily vessel
320 metric tons of bunker oil, HFO, heavy fuel oil. At the same time, the ship contains chemical containers. So we expect to have some sort of oil spill. That's a tier 3 level oil spill. At the same time, we expect chemical spill disaster also, because the situation of the ship is for the moment is really unpredictable and really getting worse. Therefore, we keep prepared and expect all other agencies, concerned agencies, will also support us to avert the possible pollution or reduce the pollution to our coastal waters and save the livelihoods of our fishermen, at the same time save our precious biodiversity.
Now in other news, ministers presented a roadmap with the aim of transforming Sri Lanka's economy into a green socio-economy with sustainable solutions to climate change to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The relevant plans were presented at a meeting held at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday with representatives of the Presidential Task Force on creating a green Sri Lanka with sustainable solutions to climate change. The President instructed the relevant ministers to prepare targeted plans to overcome the challenges in the areas of the use of fertilizer, land, biodiversity, waste management, industries, renewable energy, urban and environmental education. Accordingly, the ministries have prepared future plans following a comprehensive study. In particular, a special attention was drawn to expedite the process of increasing forest density while identifying eco-sensitive zones, as well as to accelerate reforestation in identified lands. The roadmap highlights the potential use of lands abandoned by Chena farmers, Chenas in protected forests and lands with invasive vegetation for this purpose. The government aims to increase the forest cover in Sri Lanka to 30% by 2025. The aim is also mentioned in the Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor policy statement. The President pointed out the importance of giving priority for crops that are suitable for human consumption, as well as edible to animals such as jackfruit, breadfruit and other fruits when increasing the forest cover. Well, that pretty much sums up tonight's edition of the Rupavahini English News. Join us once again tomorrow. Until then, thanks for watching. Take care. Good night.
Good night.